April 1997. Warner Brothers, Burbank. A 28-year-old assistant director named Michael stands outside stage 15, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. He's 20 minutes early, but that doesn't matter. He's about to spend the day on a Clint Eastwood set, and everyone knows you don't show up late to a Clint Eastwood set. The door opens at exactly 6 a.m., not 5:58, not 6:02, 6 o'clock. Clint walks in, nods to the crew already assembled, and sits behind the monitor. No coffee in hand, no entourage, no assistant carrying his things. Just Clint, a script, and silence. Michael has worked on 15 films in 3 years. He's seen directors arrive in limousines, directors who need 2 hours in their trailer before they can function, directors who scream at grips for moving a light 3 inches. He's seen the chaos, the ego, the waste. And he's heard the stories about Clint Eastwood, how he shoots fast, how he never raises his voice, how he finishes films under budget and ahead of schedule. But Michael assumes these are myths, Hollywood myths, the kind of stories people tell to make legends seem larger than life. Then he watches Clint work, and everything he thought he knew about filmmaking changes in 8 hours. They're shooting a scene from Absolute Power. Gene Hackman is delivering a monologue. It's a critical scene, the kind most directors would shoot from 10 angles, do 15 takes, spend 6 hours perfecting. Clint sets up 2 cameras. He walks Gene through the blocking once, just once. Then he returns to the monitor and says one word: action. Gene performs the scene. It's good, not perfect, but good, real, human. When Gene finishes, there's a pause. The crew waits for the inevitable. Let's do it again. Let's try it this way. Let's go bigger, smaller, faster, slower. But Clint doesn't say any of that. He says, moving on. The crew looks at each other. That's it? One take? Gene Hackman himself looks uncertain. Don't you want another one, Clint? I got what I need, but I could give you more. I know, but I don't need more. I need what you just gave me. That was real. If we do it again, you'll start acting. Right now, you are being. That's what I want. Michael watches this exchange with his mouth slightly open. In his 3 years in Hollywood, he's never heard a director say, I got what I need. Directors always want more takes, more angles, more coverage, because more means safety, more means options. More means if something goes wrong in editing, you have backups. But Clint doesn't want backups. He wants truth. And truth happens once. The day continues. Scene after scene, Clint works the same way. Minimal setup. 1 take, sometimes 2, if there's a technical issue. Never more. The crew moves faster than any crew Michael has ever seen. There's no standing around, no waiting for the director to make decisions. Clint has already made the decisions. He knows what he wants, and he trusts his actors to deliver it. At lunch, Michael sits with the cinematographer, a veteran named Jack, who's worked with Clint on 6 films. Michael can't help himself. Is it always like this? Jack smiles. Every single time. I've never seen him do more than 3 takes of a scene, and that 3rd take is usually because a plane flew overhead or someone's phone went off. How does he know it's right after 1 take? Because he trusts people. He casts actors he believes in. He hires crew he respects. And then he gets out of their way. Most directors think their job is to control everything. Clint thinks his job is to create an environment where people can do their best work. Then he lets them do it. Michael processes this. But what if an actor wants to try something different? Then they do it in the 1st take. Clint tells actors before they start, if you have an idea, bring it. We'll try it. But we're only doing this once, so make it count. And you know what happens? Actors bring their best because they know they won't get a second chance to be safe. They have to commit. They have to be present. And that creates performances you can't get any other way. That afternoon, they're shooting a scene between Clint and a young actress named Sarah, playing his daughter. It's an emotional scene. She's supposed to confront him about his failures as a father. Sarah is nervous. This is her first major film. She's worked with directors who yell, who demand, who make actors feel small. She's expecting that. But when they rehearse, Clint doesn't give her line readings, doesn't tell her how to say things. He just asks her one question. What does your character need from him? Sarah thinks for a moment. She needs him to admit he was wrong. She needs him to see her. Okay, then take that into the scene. Everything else will follow. They shoot the scene. Sarah is raw, vulnerable, angry. When she finishes, she's crying. Real tears, not manufactured ones. Clint doesn't say anything for a moment. Then he nods. That's beautiful. Thank you. Print it? We're moving on. Sarah looks stunned. That's it? That's it. You gave me everything I needed. Trust yourself. What you just did was perfect. Later, Sarah will tell Michael that no director has ever spoken to her that way, with respect, with trust, like she was a collaborator, not a tool. And that moment, that simple affirmation from Clint Eastwood, changed the way she approached acting for the rest of her career. The day wraps at 6 p.m., 12 hours exactly. They've shot 17 scenes. On a normal production, that would take 3 days. Clint shakes hands with the crew, thanks them by name, and leaves. No wrap party, no speeches. He just goes home. Because for Clint, the work speaks for itself. Michael drives home that night thinking about what he witnessed, and he realizes something profound. Clint Eastwood doesn't just make films differently. He's created an entirely different philosophy of filmmaking, one built on trust, efficiency, and respect, and whether Hollywood knows it or not, that philosophy is changing everything. To understand the Clint Eastwood effect, you have to understand who he was before he became a director. In 1971, Clint Eastwood was the biggest star in the world. The Dollars trilogy had made him an icon. Dirty Harry had made him a phenomenon. He could have coasted on that fame for the rest of his life. Just showed up, said the lines, collected the checks. But Clint wasn't interested in coasting. He was interested in control. Not control for ego's sake, control for art's sake. The studio system in the 1970s was broken. Directors had too much power or too little. Films were going over budget by millions, productions were taking years, and actors, even huge stars, had no say in how their films were made. Clint looked at this system and saw waste. Waste of time, waste of money, waste of talent. So he did something radical. He became a director. His first film, Play Misty for Me, was shot in 5 weeks for under $1 million. The studio executives were skeptical. How could a film made that fast be any good? Then they saw the final cut. It was tense, atmospheric, brilliantly acted. It made $10 million at the box office. Suddenly, the studios were paying attention. Maybe Eastwood was onto something, but Clint wasn't trying to prove anything to the studios. He was building a model, a way of working that prioritized the story over the spectacle, the performance over the production design, the truth over the polish. And over the next 30 years, that model would influence an entire generation of filmmakers. Directors like Steven Soderbergh, who shoots fast and loose, trusting his instincts over endless takes. Directors like Christopher Nolan, who values practical effects and efficiency on set. Directors like Paul Thomas Anderson, who gives actors freedom to find their characters without micromanaging every gesture. They all learned from Clint. Not directly, necessarily, but by watching his films, by hearing the stories, by seeing that there was another way, a better way. The Clint Eastwood method is deceptively simple. Prepare meticulously, cast carefully. Then trust. Trust your actors to know their characters. Trust your cinematographer to find the light. Trust your editor to find the rhythm. And most importantly, trust yourself to know when you have what you need. That last part is the hardest, because filmmaking is terrifying. There's so much money, so many people depending on you, so many ways it can go wrong. And the natural response to that fear is control. Shoot more takes. Get more coverage. Protect yourself. But Clint doesn't protect himself. He commits. And that commitment creates something powerful. It creates presence. In 1992, Unforgiven won Best Picture, Clint won Best Director. He was 62 years old. Most actors that age are playing grandfathers in comedies. But Clint had just made a Western that deconstructed the entire genre, a film that asked uncomfortable questions about violence, heroism, and the mythology of the American West. And he did it his way. Fast, efficient, with a crew that respected him and actors who trusted him. At the Oscars, Clint gave the shortest acceptance speech in Academy Award history. Thank you. This is for everyone who worked on this film. 20 words. No list of executives. No thanking his agent. Just acknowledgement of the people who actually made the film. Because for Clint, that's who matters. Not the people who wrote the checks. The people who showed up at 6 in the morning and stayed until the light was gone. The Eastwood effect isn't just about how he makes films. It's about how he treats people. In an industry built on hierarchy and ego, Clint created a different culture. A culture where crew members are valued as much as stars. Where everyone's time is respected. Where you don't waste a day because you can afford to. Where the work itself is the reward. Michael, the assistant director who spent that day on Clint's set in 1997, went on to become a director himself. And when he made his first film, he thought about what he learned watching Clint. Not the technical aspects, though those were valuable, but the philosophy. The idea that less can be more. That trust is more powerful than control. That people rise to meet your expectations if you set them high and then get out of the way. He shot his first film in 4 weeks. Under budget, with a crew that loved the experience, and when people asked him how he did it, he said, "I watched Clint Eastwood. I learned that filmmaking doesn't have to be chaos. It can be calm, focused, respectful, and the films that come from that approach are often better because everyone involved feels valued, and when people feel valued, they give you their best." The ripple effect is everywhere. Watch interviews with directors under 50. Ask them who influenced them. Clint Eastwood's name comes up again and again, not because of his films, though those matter, but because of how he made them, because he proved that you don't need 6 months and $100 million to make something meaningful. You need a good story, talented people, and the discipline to not overthink it. In 2008, Clint made Gran Torino. He was 78 years old. The film was shot in 33 days. It made over $270 million worldwide. Hollywood executives looked at those numbers and scratched their heads. How does he keep doing this? How does a 78-year-old man move faster than directors half his age? The answer is simple. He doesn't waste time. He doesn't waste takes. He doesn't waste anyone's effort. Every decision is intentional. Every moment matters. Younger directors started visiting his sets, watching, learning, and what they saw changed them. They saw a set where no one yelled, where actors weren't treated like children, where crew members weren't invisible, where the director arrived first and left last, where the work was hard but the atmosphere was respectful. And they thought, this is what a film set should be. This is how you honor the craft. The effect extends beyond the set. Clint's films tackle difficult subjects, aging, violence, racism, war, death. But they do it without preaching, without telling the audience what to think. They present complicated characters in complicated situations and trust the audience to wrestle with the implications. That trust in the audience is rare. Most films want to explain everything, tie up every loose end, make sure no one leaves confused. But Clint's films leave space. Space for thought, for discomfort, for interpretation. $1 Million Baby ends with a moral dilemma that has no right answer. Letters from Iwo Jima shows war from the enemy's perspective without demonizing or glorifying anyone. Gran Torino explores redemption and sacrifice without offering easy forgiveness. These films demand something from the viewer. They demand engagement, and audiences respond. Because people are tired of being spoon-fed. They want to think. They want to feel. They want films that treat them like adults. That's another part of the Eastwood effect. The belief that audiences are smart, that they can handle complexity, that they don't need everything spelled out. And this belief has influenced countless filmmakers who came after him. directors who make challenging films, films that don't insult the intelligence of the viewer, films that ask questions instead of providing answers. In 2014, American Sniper became the highest-grossing war film in history. Clint was 84. He shot it in 42 days. And the film sparked intense debate. Was Chris Kyle a hero or a killer? Was the Iraq War justified? Should we celebrate soldiers or question the wars they fight? Clint didn't answer these questions. He presented a man, a complicated, flawed, human man, and he let the audience decide what to make of him. Some people loved the film, some people hated it, but everyone had an opinion, everyone engaged. That's what great art does. It starts conversations, and Clint has been starting conversations for 50 years. The technical aspects of his approach have also influenced Hollywood. His insistence on shooting chronologically when possible, his preference for natural light, his use of long lenses to create intimacy, his reliance on practical effects over CGI. These choices aren't about being old-fashioned, they're about authenticity, about creating images that feel real, that connect with audiences on a visceral level. And younger cinematographers have taken note. They've started pushing back against the over-reliance on digital effects, started arguing for practical stunts, real locations, natural performances, because they've seen what Clint accomplishes with those tools, and they want to do the same. But perhaps the most significant part of the Eastwood effect is what it says about longevity. About staying relevant, about refusing to retire when the industry decides you're too old. Clint is in his 90s now, still making films, still showing up at 6 in the morning, still finishing ahead of schedule and under budget. And his continued presence sends a message to everyone in Hollywood. Age doesn't mean obsolescence. Experience matters, and the best work often comes later in life, when you've lived enough, failed enough, learned enough to have something worth saying. Actors in their 60s and 70s now have hope, because Clint proved that careers don't have to end at 50, that the most interesting characters are often the oldest ones, that there's a market for films about aging, death, and legacy. He opened a door, and an entire generation of actors has walked through it. Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman, Helen Mirren, Judi Dench. They're all working into their 70s and 80s, getting the best roles of their careers. And part of that is because Clint showed that audiences care about older stories, about characters who've lived full lives and are grappling with what that means. In 2018, The Mule was released. Clint directed and starred. He was 88 years old, playing a 90-year-old drug courier. The film is quiet, sad, honest. It's about a man who spent his life chasing success and neglecting the people he loved, who realizes too late what he's lost and can't get it back. It's not a fun film, it's not an easy film, but it's a true film, and it made over $170 million worldwide because people wanted to see it, because Clint Eastwood's name still means something. It means quality, it means honesty, it means a film that will make you think and feel and question. The Hollywood system wants to categorize everything. This type of film for this demographic, this budget for this return, this star for this audience. But Clint has never fit into categories. He makes westerns that aren't westerns, war films that question war, character studies disguised as thrillers, and he does it all on his own terms, without pandering, without following trends, just making the films he wants to make, the films he believes in. And somehow, it works, because authenticity always works, eventually. Young filmmakers look at Clint's career and see a roadmap, not for how to be Clint Eastwood, you can't be Clint Eastwood, but for how to build a career that lasts, how to maintain artistic integrity while working within the studio system, how to evolve without compromising, how to stay curious and hungry even after decades of success. That's the real lesson, not the one-take method, not the efficient shooting style, but the commitment to the work itself, the refusal to phone it in, the understanding that every film matters because you never know which one will be your last. Clint has directed over 40 films. Some are masterpieces, some are good, A few are forgettable, but all of them were made with the same approach, the same respect for the craft, the same trust in collaborators, the same belief that filmmaking should be about the story, not the spectacle. And that consistency has created a legacy that extends far beyond his own filmography. Walk onto any film set today and you'll see the Eastwood effect in the director who doesn't yell, in the first AD who respects the crew's time, in the actor who commits fully to the first take, in the cinematographer who trusts their instincts, in the producer who values efficiency without sacrificing quality. These aren't accidents. They're the result of decades of Clint showing that there's a better way, a more humane way, a more effective way. The entertainment industry is brutal. It chews people up and spits them out. It values youth over experience, flash over substance, profit over art. But Clint has navigated that industry for over 60 years without losing himself, without becoming bitter, without compromising his principles, and he's done it by being exactly who he is. Quiet, disciplined, respectful, committed. That's not a strategy. It's a character. And character, in the end, is what endures. In that conference room in 1997, Michael, the assistant director, learned something he carries with him to this day, that the best directors aren't the loudest. They're the ones who listen, who observe, who create an environment where everyone can do their best work, and then get out of the way. That's what Clint does, that's what he's always done, and that's why his influence will outlast his films. Years from now, film students will study Unforgiven and $1 Million Baby and Letters from Iwo Jima. They'll analyze the compositions, the performances, the themes. But the real education will come from understanding how those films were made, the philosophy behind them, the respect for collaborators, the trust in the audience, the commitment to truth over comfort. That's the Eastwood effect, not a technique, a way of being. Hollywood changes constantly. New technologies, new stars, new trends. But some things remain: the need for good stories, the power of authentic performances, the importance of respecting the people you work with. These things don't change. And Clint Eastwood has spent his entire career proving that they matter more than anything else. That if you get those things right, everything else follows. The success, the awards, the legacy, they're byproducts. The work is what matters. The people are what matter. The truth is what matters. On that set in 1997, Clint didn't give Michael a lecture about filmmaking, didn't sit him down and explain his philosophy. He just showed him, through action, through respect, through the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and what you value. And that lesson stuck. Because the best lessons always do, not the ones you're taught, the ones you witness. That's who Clint Eastwood is. Not the cowboy, not the icon. The filmmaker who changed Hollywood by refusing to play Hollywood's game. Who proved that you don't need chaos to create art. Who showed that silence is more powerful than shouting. Who understood that the greatest gift you can give your collaborators is trust. And who, in his 90s, is still showing up at 6 in the morning. Still making films. Still changing the industry one quiet decision at a time. The Eastwood effect isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. But it's everywhere, in every film set that runs smoothly, in every director who values efficiency, in every actor who commits fully to a single take, in every crew member who feels respected. That's the legacy, not the Oscars, not the box office numbers, the culture, the shift, the proof that there's a better way to make films, a more humane way, and that way works. It's always worked. We just needed someone to show us, and Clint Eastwood spent 60 years doing exactly that. If you found this story valuable, there are more like it. Stories about the quiet moments that changed everything, about the people who did things differently and made the world better for it. Subscribe if you want to hear them, because these stories matter, and they deserve to be remembered.